And welcome to the Pleasant Street Podcast with Taylor Nissi. Taylor, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bill. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm doing really great. I'm enjoying the cavalcade of guests that you're having on the podcast, and today is certainly a really interesting one. And I can't wait to hear the story and what he is about.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great conversation. Really excited. It should be episode 4 of the Pleasant Street Podcast.
Very good. Well, tell us who it is, and let's get going.
Yeah, today I am joined by Jamey Maniscalco. He is a neuroscientist who is now founding a healthcare or a health tech startup, right? Jamey,
Yeah.
And I'll let you talk a little bit more kind of about the background. But before I do that, I want to say that Jamey and I are classmates from Denison University, and we recently reconnected at Denison's Remix event, which is an event we host every year on campus for entrepreneurs, people that are entrepreneurial interested. And Jamey led a tremendous breakout session, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, that was really well received. So I'm super excited to be here sharing the microphone with you today. Thank you for making time. But with that, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, what a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much, Taylor. So I'm Jamey Maniscalco. I am a neuroscientist, and I've been a neuroscientist pretty much my entire adult life. I started studying neuroscience when we were at Denison together, actually, way long ago, and I continued through graduate school, postdoc, some time in pharmaceuticals, doing some consulting in the healthcare industry and in the pharmaceutical industry. And then I've been a professor at a liberal arts college here in Denver since then, but I recently left my professorship in order to found a wellness-focused startup that is all about redefining and re-envisioning how we engage with health and wellness to help people meet health and wellness where they're at, rather than trying to feel like they need to revise and overhaul their lives to fit wellness in or to make wellness their priority, even when for many people it really isn't.
Yeah. And this is Manifest Wellness, right? So if folks
Yes.
are interested, there will be a link in the show notes to learn more. But when we were talking about this in Granville, where Denison is, for folks who aren't aware, I thought it was such an awesome approach to make it more accessible, because sometimes we read these, here's how to optimize your life, or here's the perfect morning routine. But when you try to apply it to a busy life, especially if you're an entrepreneur, a founder, a busy executive, mix in a couple kids, a spouse, doing some of that stuff could be so much. So I really like the idea of small actions.
Yeah, and the thing for me that really solidified this concept is, as a scientist, I'm all about the evidence. And the evidence is there that there are small changes that you can make in your daily life that lead to big transformations that give you an ROI on your time that are very disproportionate. And that is really what stuck with me, is that if you're able to spend a few minutes here, a few minutes there, you can do much more for yourself than most people think. They assume, I can't make it to the gym for an hour, so I can't do anything healthy today. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And so I want to bring these science-backed tips, approaches, and mental shifts and reframes to people in a way where we can fit health and wellness in and make it our habit, make it our default, rather than feeling like you have to work towards it and grind through it every step of the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So, with that, I'd love to kind of get into it. And the first area I kind of want to talk about a little bit is stress, right? We are taught constantly that stress is bad for us as founders, as entrepreneurs, as parents, as just busy people trying to survive in this world that we're living in right now. Like, stress just seems to be coming at us from everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear kind of your take on stress, and maybe just start there about, is stress good? Is it bad? How should we be navigating it in our daily lives?
Yeah, honestly, this is a wonderful question, and more pertinent now than I feel like ever in our lifetimes. So it's true. You're spot on. Because of how stress has been really understood in the scientific community, we have first understood stress as something that is negative. And so that this avoid stress, get stress out of your life mentality and framework is so embedded into our society and into our culture. But what we're seeing is the evidence is starting to shift, which is really exciting. It's just going to take a little while for the scientific evidence to then kind of bleed forward into social awareness and general public information. But what we're seeing is, and so to make it clear for your audience, I've studied stress since an undergraduate. That's what got me interested in neuroscience, is how does our brain process stress? What is happening? How can we really avoid stress is how I initially thought about it. And so not only did I study stress as an undergraduate, but when I went to graduate school, I spent 5 years studying how stress and anxiety are processed by the brain, as well as how they affect the body and how those interact. And during that entire time, between me, my advisor, between panels of international experts on this at conferences, everyone is only talking about stress as a negative. Very few people talked about stress ever in a positive light or even a neutral light. And I was in it. And so it's not surprising to me that everyone thinks this way. However, there is a great book that has come out that's based on some of this research that stress isn't always bad. And the book, if you're interested in anything we're about to talk about, is called The Upside of Stress. It's by Kelly McGonigal. She is a Stanford researcher who has done work in stress and understanding how stress can actually be good for us. And when you start looking into the evidence of stress, what is really cool is what we find is stress can be good and stress can actually be beneficial. And I'd love to take it in whatever direction you want to see, but just to plant kind of this initial seed that most people are pretty shocked by. There was this really cool study. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, you go first. Continue with your study. Yeah.
There was this cool study about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that they took a survey of a group of people and it asked, how much stress do you feel in your day-to-day life? And it got their assessment and it basically then tracked these people for 8 years afterwards. So it was like 30,000 people. It was a huge study. And it tracked people for 8 years and looked at how many of these people died over 8 years. Because over 8 years, within 30,000 people, a lot of people are going to die from natural causes, not natural causes, things like that. And what they found was those who reported having high levels of stress and perceiving stress as being negative had the highest mortality rate. It was something like 40% higher than a group that said they had no stress. And so it's like, okay, having stress and feeling like stress is bad for you, it hurts your risk. This is what we all think. We got to get stress out of our lives. We might die because of this. It hurts us. But they added a really cool group, a group that said, I have a lot of stress in my life, but I don't think stress is bad for me. So they have the same amount of stress as this group that has a 60% increase or 40% increase of dying. However, they don't think stress is bad. That's the only difference. And what they found was that this group was 60% less likely than the group that thought stress was harmful for you to die during that 8-year period. Wow. And more importantly, they were less likely to die than the group that said they didn't have any stress whatsoever. Wow. And so here, having stress in your life, but thinking that stress is not bad for you, not necessarily good, but not bad, was actually the best group of people to be in. And the group that said they didn't have any stress was actually at risk of dying more because they didn't have stress in their lives.
Interesting. And was there any info about what was causing the stress, or this was just a general, are you stressed or not?
Yeah, it was more broad. It was meant to be kind of a large quantitative study, so they weren't really diving into the nuances of what type of stress or how in depth or what that looked like for people. But there are more studies that have come after it that have started to highlight what might be going on. But the signs point towards stress is not bad and actually might be much more critical than we anticipate.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, my perspective of it, coming from the professional side, even thinking back to Denison, right? Sometimes you just put stuff off, and then that deadline's coming. You are stressed. You are pulling an all-nighter. You're doing whatever it takes to get the job done. As an athlete, stress we know is a critical part of building muscle, building endurance, being able to perform. So I certainly see that there is a good side to stress, and so I guess, but we are so coached by the environment, by the historically, right? We've always been told stress is bad. So is there a way to not necessarily optimize, but how do you know if it's good stress, bad stress? What in your view can we take away from this study in this this data point, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who might be a little skeptical of one study out there, I'm sure you get a lot of listeners who are like, I need some more robust data. There's plenty of data that supports this perspective. This is just kind of the kind of groundbreaking, really impactful highlight point. There's a number of ways that you can basically take this information and say, how can I use stress for my advantage? I have stress. I'm not looking to get rid of it, nor is that possible. I've got kids. I've got a job. It's a high function job. It really pressures me, and I actually kind of like that. I don't want to be living on a beach somewhere, but I also don't want to have a heart attack unnecessarily.
Hmm.
Awesome. How can we leverage our stress? And here, there's a number of ways. So the first thing is just being aware that there's real scientific evidence, real empirical data that stress can be good for you. And being aware of that is the first thing. Understanding that stress can be good is the first step. And so, congratulations, listeners, you've gotten that. The second, or the second three, I should say, they they come in kind of three flavors that are really impactful in my perspective. The first is seeing that your stress response, as opposed to something that you should look to avoid, is actually helping you perform at your best. So what we see when we are stressed is, and it's a little easier to think about physically, but your heart starts pumping, you end up having higher blood pressure, things like that. These are all fight or flight responses that gear us really effectively towards physical action. But what we often don't think about when we're sitting at our desk chairs or doing a very complicated and challenging work project is it changes the chemistry in your brain too. So stress causes release of certain neurochemicals like norepinephrine is one and dopamine is another. And what we see with these is norepinephrine is an alertness chemical in your brain. It helps wake you up and it can help you focus your attention, and dopamine can help focus that attention as well. So if you were feeling really stressed about a project, what's actually happening is it's putting your brain into a state where you can really focus in on this work, and it's preparing your brain to perform at its best. And a lot of people see it as no, I work best when I'm relaxed. And the evidence isn't there. The evidence shows you work best when you're optimally stressed. You're not paralyzed with anxiety, but you're
Hmm.
also not super relaxed. You're not sitting on the couch watching TV. That's not when we're thinking our clearest. So
Interesting.
recognizing that stress is actually priming us to function really well from a neurological perspective is huge.
Very interesting. Yeah. And so the other side of it, and I think kind of the first point you made, is we each have a choice to a certain extent of how to perceive stress.
Yeah.
And this is, and I guess this is a question for you. Obviously, you're the expert, but I like the idea. I've heard it and read a lot, and I've listened to you on a couple other podcasts getting ready for this one, talk about the idea of neuroplasticity and that
Yeah.
we can kind of coach and change our brain to change the way we react to different things. So is this something that if you're someone who's listening to this now thinking, I don't do well with stress, when I get stressed, I don't react that well. Is this something where we could use, neuroplasticity to change this behavior and get that better outcome, that better performance during periods of stress?
100%. And it's a fascinating concept. I think this is one of the most underappreciated concepts in neuroscience that is actionable for most people day to day. So, the idea that you're bringing up, Taylor, neuroplasticity, is the
Hmm.
plasticness of our brain. And the idea that our brain isn't static, it isn't a concrete object that should never change through time. It's biological. It's like our other tissues. It changes, it's moldable. And the cool thing with the brain is it's constantly being formed based on the actions we take, the thoughts we have, the emotions we have. And what many of us recognize is children are really neuroplastic. A child can learn another language really easily, whereas it gets a little harder as we age. A child adapts to different environments very effectively, whereas it gets a little harder to adapt. We like things a certain way as we get older. It's true that our brain gets less and less plastic over time. Our brains will never be as plastic as our children's brains, but they are still very plastic and they are still able to be trained. The challenge is if you want to create a new neural habit, a new way of thinking, a new way of emotionally responding, a new way of viewing things, not only do you need to create that new habitual path in your brain, that neural pathway, you need to carve the path, but you need to get out of the path that you've already carved, intentionally or not, so far. So if you are a negative Nancy kind of person, if you tend to look on the negative side, the pessimistic side, and that's how everyone at work looks at it, and you always commiserate about how much things suck and how challenging this is and what a world, oh my gosh, you've spent years carving a negative path of how to see things. And to get to a place where you can see things as glass half full, to see the positive side of things, not only do you need to carve that positive path, but you need to get away from the negative path. And the science is there, the evidence is there that this happens and that this can work. And I've personally experienced it. And it just takes a lot of intentional work and intentional training and intentional mind frame and mindset shifting. But when it happens, it is magical. It is really impactful to be able to look at something that's really negative, and to be able to stop and say, well, I'm grateful for XYZ. And so in my life, I've been able to make progress towards this, and every step of the way, it's felt fantastic. And I'd be happy to dive in more, but that's very much the general principle there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's a good, the idea of small intentional shifts, right? That's what you're doing at Manifest Wellness. The idea of neuroplasticity, that's another small intentional shift. And then the talk you gave at Denison was about small intentional shifts that entrepreneurs can make. So I think this is a nice segue into talking about some of those, actionable small intentional shifts that we can make as entrepreneurs or just busy professionals who might be navigating some different things. So, why don't you introduce one of the topics from the talk, and we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to dive into any of them, unless there were any that in particular you would like to chat about. I'm happy to also kind of go with the flow, or I can bring one that I love.
Yeah, let's start with the one you like the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one I've been really leaning into lately, and it's for very good reason, is it's called the physiological sigh.
Yeah.
And so this is a breathing technique. And
yeah, I've seen the videos on LinkedIn. Love it.
yeah. Do you? Okay.
Yep.
Why don't we start by just doing one with your audience listening here? And so everyone who's with us, let's do one together. And what I'll do is I'll describe what it's going to look like, and then I'll have us do one together. I'll kind of direct it. We're going to do two together. You get to feel it in the moment, and then we can talk about what's happening while you're doing this. So the idea is, before we do it, we're going to take a deep breath in through our nose, and we're going to bring as much air into our lungs as possible, kind of a nice big deep breath. But when you're at the top, you're going to take one little extra sip of air in, kind of really pushing it. And then we're going to blow that air out through our mouth as though it's coming out through a straw. Nice and slowly for as long as you can blow that out without passing out. So let's try it together. Let's breathe in through our nose. Extra sip. And exhale. Let's do one more. In through the nose. Extra sip. Out through the mouth. And that's it.
And so I feel like right when we did the first one, I just felt like a release of tension. And so, I guess first off, this sorry, what's it called again? The intentional, the
physiological sigh.
Physiological. So the physiological sigh is a tool we can use when we're stressed, when we're anxious. Like when is the time to deploy it? And then tell us a little bit about why it makes us feel the way it does.
Absolutely. So there's a number of reasons. I like to use it really when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed, or anytime where I'm feeling frazzled and unclear, which often comes with stress and anxiety. I'm really worried about this big project. I don't know how to tackle it. I can't think straight, but there's a bunch of big pressure. I need to make some decisions today on how it's going. It's too much. It's too much. I like to use that as a moment. And what I find is this not only helps calm me down in the moment, but it also helps me, because of that, think more clearly. And so I often use it as a reset mechanism. as well. Like between tasks, before jumping into a big work period, a big presentation, I'll pause and instead of checking my email, instead of checking my social media,
Mm-hmm.
and using it as a way to clear my mind, calm my body, and then move intentionally into what's next. And the best part is, you saw the whole thing right there. It takes 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not doing a 15-minute meditation 3 times a day to pivot. Um,
Yep.
so
It's a
why is it
nice
so
little,
impactful?
yeah, it's a nice little action you can just kind of build into the day. Done with
Yeah,
this task, on to the next task. Let's just pause for a minute and reset that intentionality. That's awesome.
exactly.
And yeah, go ahead.
And so there's some reasons why it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing that I like about this one is, I don't know about you, but when I get frustrated, upset, kind of in it, I think a lot of us don't want to calm down. We're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
leaning into our frustration, our anger, whatever it might be. And we know we should, but it's really hard to talk yourself out of it at that moment. Um, what I love about this is if you can just get yourself to breathe in that way, you don't have to want to calm down. There's physiological, biological mechanisms that are going to calm you down, whether you want to or not. And
Mm-hmm.
one of them is the fact that you take that little extra sip of air at the top. What that does is it inflates your lungs to a degree that we normally don't inflate them. And it allows for more oxygen carbon dioxide transfer happening in the lungs. So it brings more oxygen into your bloodstream while removing more carbon dioxide. And what we know is the levels of carbon dioxide in your bloodstream can be associated with anxiety. You start hyperventilating, you're not effectively clearing carbon dioxide out of your bloodstream, and it makes you feel worse. It makes you feel more anxious. And so
Mm-hmm.
by clearing more out with this physiological sigh, it calms you down. And the other thing is breathing out through your mouth. The breathing out process is regulated by your calming rest and digest nervous system. Breathing
Mm-hmm.
in is fight or flight, anxiety kind of nervous system. Breathing out is that rest and digest calming nervous system. So if you can breathe out for a very long period of time, you're forcing your nervous system into a state of calm. And these
Very
two
cool.
together work quickly and effectively.
Yeah. So one question that I had kind of preparing for this podcast was, in your work as a neuroscientist and behavioral change, are there any underrated mental or biological levers that entrepreneurs couldn't, number one, could pull, and are there things that they neglect? Like it sounds like this is a great lever to pull to get
Yeah.
that pivot, that intentionality. Is there anything else? And then at the same time, how do sleep, nutrition, the idea of neuroplasticity, how does that all, how can that all be, leveraged in the best way for busy entrepreneurs that are trying to deal with all of the stress that comes with being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. And it's a huge challenge. I mean, it's just a genuinely huge challenge. And um, prior to having become one myself and starting a company myself, I think I would have underrated how much emotional and cognitive self pressure there is to keep things moving as fast as possible, to be as successful as possible 24/7. If people aren't, getting things done within a day or two of when you're talking to, oh, how could it take this long? Um, I would have underappreciated that having worked in other people's businesses for so long. Um,
Hmm.
However, I think hustle and grind culture is so ingrained and is so detrimental in many ways, that we really underappreciate the criticality and the benefit of self care practices, of mental and physical health and wellness for ourselves. We treat ourselves terribly while demanding so much of ourselves and recognizing that for many of us, for us intellectual workers out there, it's our brain. And our brain is interconnected with our body. And this is our tool. This is really what differentiates us. If you're an athlete, it's your brain alongside, your musculature and your physical ability, whatever it might look like.
Hmm.
But for many of us that are creating concepts, that are doing kind of desk work, it's our brain, and we're not fueling our brain in a way that allows it to function at its best. But instead, we're trying to band aid and fix all the problems with not caring for it, like not getting sufficient sleep, like over caffeinating instead of finding ways to actually reset and rejuvenate during the day, like assuming we should be on a 24/7 availability and work schedule, as opposed to seeing days off. And even the terminology is terrible. It's a day off. That sounds weak. That sounds like you need rest because you're a weak person. No, these days off have been shown to not only help you rest and reset, be your best, but is often when you fuel creativity. We really
Interesting.
struggle to be creative when we're consuming. If you're constantly looking at other people's work on socials, if you're constantly intaking other people's work on podcasts, if you're constantly reading things and absorbing, that's great for a period of time. But when are we creative? It's when our brain has a chance to work with all the information we've been thinking through. And it's not a surprise that most people have these insights in the shower, because
Yeah.
it's one of the few places in our lives where we don't have a device with us. And so here, I think what we're seeing, and you highlighted it with sleep as well, we're running ourselves ragged, assuming 2 hours of extra work today is more important than anything else. But then we're constantly functioning at 75%, 80%. Whereas if we took better care of ourselves and carved out time for sleep, carved out time to step away during the day, to have a walk during lunch, to get outside, to listen to music quietly with our eyes closed during the day, we might make the most out of the next 3 hours. But because we're checking emails and then we're checking socials to try to relax, we're stressing our brains constantly. We're not getting the most out of our workday, and we feel like we're constantly behind. It's a real vicious
Hmm.
cycle.
Yeah, and I mean, I constantly feel that pressure, right? I get to get the kids in bed finally, and I come into my office to organize stuff, and I open email. And it's like, well, here's I could do this quickly. It won't take that long. And then
Yep.
before I know it, it's 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then all of a sudden I'm exhausted, and that's just the loop for the week. So that certainly resonates with me, that idea. So I guess another question I'll ask is, what does, in your opinion, right? You're obviously the professional here, but what does the mental edge actually look like for an entrepreneur, a founder? What habits or indicators can kind of separate the people that are able to keep performing versus burning out? Like, what are some of the small intentional habits that people could implement into their life to help them balance this out better?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and I think it's a highly personal question, in my perspective, and I think a lot of it starts with really deep reflection and discernment of what for me is restorative, what fills my cup. And I think a lot of people, I think we tend to dive into things that give us a quick escape and a quick dopamine hit. And this is our
Hmm.
phones in many cases, they're always with
Hmm.
us. But when we are doing things like resting by scrolling, um, it's not resting. You're getting a quick dopamine hit and you might feel like it feels like resting, but it's actually quite stressful for our brains to be scrolling through hundreds or thousands of different pieces of content over the course of minutes to hours. And so for me, I think of a lot of these very basic, I think of them as simple but not easy in our
Hmm.
modern world, ways to help me reset, that I know are going to be good for the things that matter to me, the bigger picture things, being there for my family, being present, being there for the work that needs to be done, being able to focus for big picture project work and not getting distracted by small things, by working on my terms, what's important to me versus being reactive. What do other people need from me? I'm constantly checking email. I'm on other
Hmm.
people's terms. They email me, that's the work I do. I'm not choosing the work. So, how can I get these things? And there's a few basic things that I like to do that I would highly suggest. And the first is starting my day with a very high level intention setting. So, starting my day with two or three things that are the things that are the most important for me to get done today. Whether that's
Hmm.
a project, whether that's thinking through a big decision, whether that's a collaborative meeting, a presentation, and making sure that that goes well. But what is it that if I could only do two things today, these are the two that need to get done? And making sure that I've got those in mind. And I'm not going to suggest people calendar this. Like there's a whole bunch of
Hmm.
so it's challenging. But knowing what's important to me, and I try to do my intention setting before I open my phone for the first time in the day, because I do not want
Hmm.
other people's emails to me and requests of me to adulterate or dirty my perspective of what's important for me today. I'll even do it the night
Hmm.
before sometimes, but always reiterate in the morning. And so I think a lot of people don't recognize how much they're working on other people's terms. And
Mm-hmm.
here I think that's one thing. The second thing is getting outside. We underappreciate the benefits of getting outdoors, and especially outdoors in something of a natural environment. It doesn't need to be a crazy forest or a mountainous hike. It can be a tree lined street, a garden, a city park, a backyard. Something with natural green space, a tree, a plant, some grass is just fine. Water is fantastic. This does a lot of things for our brain. One of the first things it does is exposure to sunlight, even through clouds, helps regulate our circadian rhythm, our daily rhythm of sleeping and wakefulness. And so if you're getting exposure to sunlight, it can help you fall asleep more quickly, get into a healthier sleep cycle, and stay asleep longer. And so if we're under fluorescent lights all day in an office building, our brain doesn't really know what time it is because it doesn't have great signal from the sun to tell it. But you step outside and you get sunlight during the day, it helps your brain figure out what time it is, what time you should be going to bed, what time you should be waking up. And this can help our sleep, which then has these cascading effects on better mood, lower cortisol levels, all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting outside to take these breaks. And then another one for me is perspective shifting. And there's a quote that I love that I always come back to, almost as a mantra sometime. But when I think things are going really poorly for me, when I've had a really bad day or something really bad's happened in my life, or I'm in a really bad mood for a reason I can't figure out, I stop and I say, it's a quote by Sam Harris, who is a neuroscientist and a philosopher. And the quote is, I'm going to botch it a little bit here, but it's something like, right now, there are 1 billion people in this world that would consider it their greatest dream come true to switch places with you.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that always stops no matter how bad of a day I'm having. I've never really had a bad day in my life. I really,
Mm-hmm.
truly haven't. Um, and that leads me to think things like, what kind of gratitude might I be able to say right now? I'm so glad that I have some clean water to drink. This is completely clean water, and I can have it whenever I want. What a blessing. I
Mm-hmm.
slept in a bed that was warm, and I wasn't worried about my safety last night. Wow. How special is that? I am not food insecure. Oh my gosh, what a great world. And I think oftentimes we get caught up in our own micro dramas. But if you can say something as simple as, I can have clean water whenever I want, and that's not true of everyone, all of a sudden it kind of humbles you back into this place of, my life is unabashedly amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And these small little things mean nothing compared to the things I do have.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me
Yeah.
gets all the more important when your life is your work and a lot of it's out of your control.
Yeah.
Right? You're dealing with other people's timelines, other people's decisions, customers'
Mm-hmm.
decisions. You can't control any of that. What can you
Yep.
control? How do I view the most important things in my life?
Yep. So just to summarize there, it's really starting with intentionality, starting every day with intentionality, and making sure you're focusing on the things that you've determined are most important, not other people.
You know,
Trying to mix nature into your life every day, and then if you are dealing with those stresses, or if you're not having a great day for some reason, the deal's not going the way it wants, maybe you're having problems with an employee, whatever it might be, reframe and practice some gratitude. It sounds like, right? And those are the things that you think are really can have a big impact on folks.
absolutely. And I think to tie back to where we started with stress being good for us, there's one last thing, which, and there's tons, but one last thing for the sake of today would be, why is stress, why did that group that we talked about earlier that had a lot of stress, but said they didn't mind having stress, they didn't think it was a bad thing, they were living on average longer than those people without stress. Why were they living longer and maybe better? There's some evidence that people live better that way too. We care about things, we stress about things that we care about.
Mm-hmm.
And so here, every time you start to dig into, why am I stressing so much? What you're going to end up digging to is something that you truly care about. And to recognize I stress because I care fundamentally shifts what stress means to you. Stress is no longer this demon that you need to get out of your life. I want to chase stress. I want so much stress in my life because I want to care about my daughter. I want to care about my wife, my family, my friends. I want to care about the state of the world as a whole. I want to care about my business. I don't want to not care.
Mm-hmm.
And all the things I care about are going to bring me stress because I'm going to worry about them. I'm going to want them to be a certain way, and they might not always go the way I would hope for them, that kind of thing. And if you can reframe that as, oh, I care about this. Like, I wouldn't worry about my daughter making all the wrong decisions about brushing her teeth if I didn't care. Right? If I didn't care about
Yeah.
her teeth or her health or who she was, yeah, good, don't do it. Easier for me not to talk about it.
Yeah.
But here, the only reason I get so frustrated when she won't brush her teeth is because I care so much about her. And those are two fundamentally different feelings. I'm so frustrated. Why are you making my life harder? And I care so much about you that this is giving me stress. And so I think
Awesome.
that for an entrepreneur stressed about their business, someone who is an executive in the C-suite responsible for a lot, recognizing that all this stress you're feeling is amazing. It's because you have a lot to care about in life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, this has been a great episode. I think we've got a lot more to cover, and I think there's a lot more to explore. So maybe we'll have you back again. But for folks who tuned in today, try, if you didn't try the physiological sigh with us, try it. It like you immediately feel it. And then again, to Jamey's point, think about intentionality every morning before you're checking your screens. Try to get outside. And again, think about gratitude a little bit and how it can have such a positive impact on your life, even if you feel like you're dealing with some stress. So awesome. Thank you so much, Jamey.
It's been such a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Taylor.
That was one riveting conversation. You could have him back. You could keep going. We will all keep listening. But I want to go back to where you started because there's something that really struck me, Jamey, and that is, and it's something that I've just always naturally felt, that stress is actually a positive thing. You took it around and reframed it and expressed it much better than I can and much more articulately. But we like stress. Most of us really actually do like stress. And I find that it's like the people, anybody I know who retires freak out because suddenly that stress has been taken out of their life and they don't know what to do anymore. They're lost because suddenly this bad, ugly boogeyman called stress isn't with them anymore. And now they're going to find, I know a lot of people who go out to try and find a new source of stress, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing to add on there, there's an entrepreneur who I'm pretty friendly with who recently sold his business, and he talks about the one thing that really bothers him is when he goes to sleep every night, he doesn't have any dragons to think about slaying the next day. And it's not in a bad way, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has all sorts of different dragons, right? It could be your daughter brushing her teeth, it could be a work thing, but having that thing to approach, to attack, to overcome was really important for him, and it's been a tough adjustment not having him. So yeah, I think there's a lot to say that stress can be a good thing.
Yeah. Having meaning and purpose. Really, it's coming back to these. You think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're so fortunate to be in a world in which we can have shelter and we can have food and we can have water and we can have basic safety and some familial, and then we're able to kind of move up this pyramid of increasingly challenging and abstract needs in our life. And we're in a place where, all right, I don't need to struggle to find my next meal every single day. I get to worry about what brings me joy, what brings me purpose, how am I contributing, and all of that is intertwined inextricably with being stressed and caring about that and stressing about it. I completely agree with both of you. And it's a wonderful thing. It feels great. I've had periods where I really wasn't stressed about things, and you start to feel like a rudderless ship. And it doesn't feel great.
That's great. Well, we're at that point where we're starting to wrap things up. And Jamey, before we get out of here, if people are interested in following up on your work or learning more about what you're doing now in your company and stuff, how do they find out about you?
Yeah, I can give you all my social links as well as my email. I would love to chat about this kind of thing, and I love to help people kind of figure out how to implement this in their lives. But my website is manifestwellness.co. And then you can find me on Instagram at Nextdoor Neuro. So Nextdoor Neuro, Neuro. And I'm the next door neuroscientist. I'm friendly and approachable like your next door neighbor, but I can bring some of the neuroscience into your life in an actionable way. That's kind of how I'm trying to bring this all to life for people.
That's great. And Taylor, it's your turn. For people who are listening to the podcast who maybe want to reach out to you for a different kind of conversation, how do they get a hold of you?
Yep. So in the show notes, there'll be links to Jamey's info, and then there's links to my info as well. You can book a 20-minute, no commitment, just conversation. You can find me on LinkedIn to keep up with the content, other things that we've got coming out. And then we do have our strategic wealth scorecard. This is a 2-minute assessment that you can take to see how well your wealth is aligned with your vision and if you have any issues or challenges that you might want to address. And it gives you feedback broken down by the main categories of our wealth operating system process.
Fantastic. The other thing you can do, listeners, if you're not a subscriber, you can do this right away. You can just reach out and hit the follow button. Become a subscriber. That way, the next time Taylor drops a new episode, you will be notified and you can give it a listen. Maybe even like part 2 of an interview with Jamey, as a matter of fact. The other thing I would ask is that if you like the podcast, if you find it useful, please tell people about it. Word of mouth promotion is invaluable in this world where all too often we're recommended things by things and things that we don't even know what they are. People are really good sources for word of mouth. So thank you. That would be great. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of Taylor and everybody behind the Pleasant Street Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Pleasant Street Pod. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss a new episode. To learn more, visit pleasantstreetwealth.com or give us a call at 518-363-9363. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect those of Pleasant Street Wealth Advisors, LLC or Farther Finance Advisors, LLC. This content is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered professional investing advice. Always consult your financial advisor or another qualified provider with questions about your investment planning.